Welcome to Canada India Insight, episode 13. Today we have a special roundtable on Canada India USA relations with three very prominent speakers: Rana Sarkar, Canada's Consul General to San Francisco and Silicon Valley, Apurva Srivastava, India's Consul General to Toronto, and M. Rangaswamy, founder of Indiaspora in Washington, D.C. Today's roundtable is produced by Impact Media and Events Corporation and supported by Canada India USA Development Forum. Before we begin today's roundtable discussion, let me introduce both the organizations briefly and the work that we do. Impact Media and Events Corporation is a Canadian media and events company since 2002 that produces Canada India Insight, a monthly e-publication. Canada India USA Development Forum is a membership-based Canadian not-for-profit organization since 2010. Together, Impact Media and the forum organizes two annual conferences, Canada India Insight and Canada India USA Trilateral Conference, an annual Celebrating Success Gala, business leaders roundtables once a month, political leaders roundtables once a month, interprovincial conferences. We have done one with Yukon, and the next one is Punjab, Ontario virtual conference on February 5. Webinars with cabinet ministers, high commissioners, ambassadors, consul generals, and senior business leaders from all three countries. Several prominent business personalities have participated on our platforms and events, both virtual as well as in person. You can see the list of speakers right here on the screen or on both our websites, imac.biz and Canada India USA Development Forum.com. I would also like to thank all of our sponsors, Tangentia, Surte Sweetmart, Pavi Binning, Skylink Group, and Seneca College for their continued support. So with that brief introduction, let me introduce our first speaker for today, Mr. Rana Sarkar. Mr. Rana Sarkar was appointed as Consul General of Canada to San Francisco, Silicon Valley in 2017 with accreditation for Northern California and Hawaii. He is also a member of Canada's NAFTA Advisory Council. Mr. Sarkar previously served as National Director for High Growth Markets at KPMG Canada and co-chairman of the Advisory Board at the Munk School of Global Affairs at the University of Toronto. From 2009 until 2013, he was President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canada-India Business Council. In 2005, Mr. Sarkar co-founded Content Partners, a global content agency, and in 2001, the advisory firm Rawlings Atlantic Limited. He began his career as a consultant at Roland Berger Strategy Consultants in London and Munich and helped establish Roland Berger in India. He also served as a visiting lecturer at the London School of Economics and the CASS Business School at the University of London. Mr. Sarkar attended the London School of Economics, Queen's University at Kingston, Ontario, and the INSEAD executive program in France. He is a member of the Advisory Council of the Movat Center for Policy Innovation, Canada 2020, and the Literary Review of Canada, and a distinguished fellow at the Munk School of Global Affairs, University of Toronto. Mr. Sarkar is married to lawyer and author Reva Seth. They live in San Francisco with their three children and an oversized Labradoodle. So if I have missed anything, my apologies, but looking forward to. So over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that comprehensive introduction. Apologies for everyone having to sit through it. Nonetheless, what I would say is, first of all, it is a great honor to be with you on this platform and to be with my colleagues who I think that through the course of this conversation you'll get a sense that we do, although we sit in different places and have come from different spots to this journey. I think in terms of the journey of circulation, the increase of trade, and the way in which the Canada-India-US dynamic is populating itself, I think that we're all on very much the same page, and we're all part of this bigger journey. And what I would say from my spot here, the key parts of the narrative that I think that you highlighted in my background is that obviously, I'm of Indian background. I've, my parents immigrated to Canada in the late 60s into 1970, and I have grown up for the most part in Canada, but I have had the kind of quintessential sort of circular career journey, and in terms of both life interests and what's happening in the world, in the sense that I've spent obviously time in the UK, which is part of this circulatory path that we're talking about. I mean, I think that you were very prescient in trying to build this connection point between India, Canada, and the United States, because really these journeys mirror journeys that took place in the past, and these are lattice work networks of trade and of people and of ideas that have pre-existed the current configuration, and have deep connection points, and largely through people, and those have nodes in various parts of the world that I think that all of us ply, including bits of the Middle East. Also, Britain is a big part of that piece as well. But the relationship between Canada and India and the United States, and I'd say this upfront because I think there's a lot of work that we can do to deepen this. And what I would say is that unlike many traditional trading-based relationships, or even tripartite or international relationships, these aren't really relationships of governments. These are relationships of people. And the networks of people and talent that have been flowing through these on this sort of circulatory gyro for generations now. And I think that in a way, and this gets to some of the work that I would say that MR is a great exemplar of in terms of his career, in terms of the growth of the ideas economy, the growth of the networks as things in themselves that really can create value. The Indian diaspora and the Indian connectivity point through, and particularly sort of, accelerated through industries like technology, has been significant and will grow exponentially in the decades to come. And often in terms of what we do as diplomats, in terms of the, tracking of trade and tracking of investment statistics and these sorts of things, they actually don't really capture the appropriate depth of the connection, nor the real importance of the future connection. And what I would say is that, most of the activity that takes place between in this kind of circulatory gyro between these places is really about people and talent and ideas sort of flowing through these networks. And so that could be trade, it could be service sector sort of activity that's taking place. It could be ideas and technology flow that's taking place. It could be research that is happening in each of these places that have a lot of commingling that's taking place right now. And so I think that going forward, if you think about like what are the big statistics in the Canada-India relationship that I've always, sort of pay attention to, and, for forever and a day, folks used to pay attention to the trade number. And I would say that, the trade number is a deceptive number because it doesn't really capture the full depth of the services trade that takes place. It doesn't capture the human transit that takes place between these places. Obviously, Canada is an enormous destination for Indian students, a significant destination for Indian expatriate talent in terms of how India circulates. And I think those have been singular achievements. The depth of, the presence of all of us here on the call is almost testament to the fact that, these are long-term and very successful investments that have taken place. And what I would say is, and this is, it speaks to the future agenda that's taking place. Obviously, we're in an extraordinary moment. I mean, the COVID-19 is in a way the accelerant of so much out there, but it also sort of gives us a indication that, public health and and things like viruses, do have a resetting capacity, but it also sort of has a ability to underline trends that have already been there. And what I would say in one of those trends is not just the acceleration of technology, which is a significant piece of this, but it's also will provide a platform for a more intentional global settlement in the future. And that's something that we are going to have to work for collectively. And on that, I would say that, Canada, our greatest asset as a country is not our natural resources necessarily, but it's our people and our ability to fashion what I call our weapons of mass attraction, our ability to attract the next generation of talent. And India, of course, is the great exporter nation of talent in this part of our century, and so that relationship will continue and will grow and foster. And the United States as a portion of this, and obviously, there's lots of people say that many things about what's taking place here in the United States right now, and the repositioning of the global order that's taking place, and the United States' role in that. But what I would say is that the strength of the U.S., and particularly, we're sitting here in California, where obviously, sort of, we're dealing with virus and climate change issues. We're dealing with a whole conundrum of challenges that are long-standing, but technology and the way in which this new economy is being harnessed is, that is happening in spades here. And the relationship between talent and the ability for California-based companies to participate, and also sort of U.S. companies to participate in this kind of global movement of technology is going to be an important part of this next decade. And Canada, interestingly, plays a very important role in that, largely because, we are not just the near neighbor, but we're also sort of an extraordinarily fast-growing technology hub, services hub, and we are a great platform for which a lot of U.S. companies are looking to go global. I've much more to say on these topics, but let me pass it on to my knowledgeable and esteemed colleagues here for comment as well.
That was very insightful, Mr. Sarkar, and definitely we would hear more from you during the panel. So that brings us to the second speaker of the day, Apurva Srivastava. She is India's Consul General to Toronto. Apurva ji is a career diplomat, having joined the Indian Foreign Service in 2001. Prior to being appointed as India's Consul General in Toronto, she worked with the Minister of External Affairs from January 2017 to August 2019. In her 19-year diplomatic career, she has served twice in the Indian Embassy in Paris from August 2003 to October 2006, and again from August 2012 to July 2015, and in the Indian Embassy in Kathmandu from June 2009 to August 2012. In the headquarters, she has served as Under Secretary SAARC and as Director Administration. Consul General Ms. Srivastava holds a Master's in Psychology from Lucknow University. She speaks Hindi, English, and French. She is married to Mr. Anshuman Gaur, a career diplomat. They have 2 daughters. So over to you, Apurva ji.
Thank you. Thank you, Vipul ji. Thank you for, again, such a long introduction. And just wanted to, commend Mr. Sarkar for his wonderful, intervention, and look forward to hearing Mr. Rangaswamy. And first of all, thank you, Vipulji, for bringing together all of us and for this wonderful, it's a great initiative. I've never attended, which is a thing which is trilateral while being in Canada. But while as I discussed with you, I'll focus on my on India-Canada relationship, basically. I believe that, India-Canada relations are the most, India and Canada are the most natural partners in this world, because we share a truly unique relationship. There's so much more that unites us than it divides us. We are both vibrant democracies. We are wedded to rule of law. We speak the same language. Our English is different from Canadians because we have our own English English thing. But we share the Commonwealth traditions. We have a similar parliamentary model, and we see eye to eye on most of the geopolitical issues. And above all, the most important thing is that we are the two multicultural societies which truly value and cherish diversity. And of course, as Ranaji has already said, that we are also bound together by strong people-to-people ties with 1.6 million strong Indian diaspora, which is around 4% of Canadian population, which is functioning as a living bridge between our two countries. So taken together, there are very few countries in the world which can match the complementarities that bind both our countries together. During the visit of Prime Minister Modi in 2015, we established a strategic partnership. And since then, several steps have been taken to build a healthy partnership. Of course, we have this strategic partnership is underpinned by strong economic partnership. The trade and commerce relation, when you look at it, just the figures, not counting the services, it's 10 billion Canadian dollars. The number is just like, I think, 4 days of trade between US and Canada, which is substantially low. But as Mr. Sarkar already pointed out, there are so many other factors which nourish this relationship. The most important, the investment, the Canadian investment in India has increased substantially. In the last 5 years, it has increased from Canadian dollars 5 billion to now close to $55 billion. In fact, if we look at Brookfield, it is one of the top investors of India globally. And Canadian investors are continuing to look for opportunities for further investments, even during these pandemic times. When we look at Canadian companies setting up shop in India, they have doubled in last 5 years. As of now, there are around 600 Canadian companies which have presence in India, and there are more than 1,000 Canadian companies who are actively pursuing business in Indian market. When we talk about Indian companies in Canada, there are several companies that are active in Canada in all sectors, mainly pharma, software, steel, natural resources. And some of these Indian companies have also made significant investment in Canada and overall employ close to 20,000 people. Of course, there are other areas where the bilateral partnership is doing quite well. The Canadian uranium from Cameco has been powering our civil nuclear plants. In higher education, there has been a remarkable increase in the number of Indian students studying in Canada. Today, with 230,000 students, India is the largest source of foreign students for Canadian universities, who spend around $7 billion in tuition fees. Our scientists and researchers are working on several projects together. If we talk about connectivity, in last 1.5 years, Air India and Air Canada had providing direct flights, especially from Toronto. And you will be surprised to know that post-pandemic, now earlier Air India had 3 flights a week. Now Air India has 5 flights a week, and Air Canada also have 5 flights a week from Toronto, which is almost double the pre-pandemic times. So many people are traveling every day despite the pandemic. This partnership has deepened and diversified over the years. The traditional mix of 3 E's, economic cooperation, educational exchange, and energy security, we have added new dimensions such as clean energy, peaceful use of space, entrepreneurship. The expertise of Canadian technology companies in design and engineering services, software development, and clean technology is of great importance for India as we build our smart cities. And there's a lot of cooperation. There's a talk of a lot of cooperation still going on. India's growing digital market, which is fueled by a rapidly expanding aspirational middle class, and the very strong startup ecosystem, it provides enormous opportunities for Canada's high-tech companies to scale up the innovations in India. And we are working with several companies in that area as well. I see a tremendous scope for cooperation in newer areas like artificial intelligence, defense, healthcare, financial technology, and life sciences, where both India and Canada have made tremendous advances in recent years. The newly announced National Education Policy in 2020 creates great opportunities for Canadian universities in expanding their already deep collaboration by setting up shop in India. We still have to work on the legislation on these national policy, but we have already in discussions with some universities. We are giving them basic information on how to do it. And the most important thing is, Canada has for years a welcome destination for people of India, from India, and they offered the Indian community an opportunity to flourish and prosper. India is the largest source of migrants to Canada, which is an important element of Canada's continued prosperity. 1.6 million, as I already said. But apart from that, there are 700,000 Indian citizens who are working here and studying here. This includes 230,000 Indian students. The Indian community in Canada is affluent, hardworking, and and contributing to Canadian life in every field, from politics to commerce and from academics to arts. I mean, Canada is the only country where we have 22 MPs in the national parliament, 3 ministers now. In the Ontario legislation, if we see, there are 7 MPPs. In Winnipeg, we see there are several, there are 1 MPP. So even if we look at Vancouver and Toronto, I mean, there are several MPPs. So much, and Canada is the only country that give opportunities for immigrants to be part of the politics, not only the economic ecosystem, but also the political ecosystem. So it's such a welcoming atmosphere. And during this global pandemic, we have seen how crucial our the cooperation between our 2 countries have been. Our Prime Minister has spoken twice to each other since the pandemic began, and our foreign ministers and our trade ministers have spoken several times regularly. We have assisted each other in evacuation of our citizens during the pandemic, and India responded with alacrity to the request from Canada for supplies of hydrochloroquine and paracetamol. And more recently, India and Canada have started looking at possible collaboration for ensuring affordable and accessible supply of test kits and vaccines for COVID. As 2 very strong countries who have unshakable faith in democracy and freedom, societies we are that are multicultural and diverse, we are natural allies, and we expect this greater collaboration and engagement will definitely enhance. And the Indo-Canadian community will definitely contribute to that. And the testimony is today that Mr. Rana Sarkar and Canada's High Commission in India is also from Indian origin. So it really gladdens our heart. And I must stop here, and I look forward for further discussion. Thank you so much.
That was wonderful, Apurvaji. I mean, forget about what it is today. I mean, when I think about what it can be 10 years from now, I mean, the possibilities are like immense. Nowhere in the world is India so connected, to its diaspora, probably the fast growing diaspora as it is in Canada. So we are all very excited looking at the possibilities ahead. And let me now bring in our next speaker for the day, who can actually, who is looking at the prism from both sides. We'll touch base upon that during the Q&A further. Mr. Rangaswamy is an entrepreneur, investor, corporate eco-strategy expert, community builder, and a philanthropist. Recognized as a software business expert, he participated in the rapid expansion of the Silicon Valley software industry during his tenure as an executive at both large and small software companies. In 1997, Mr. Rangaswamy founded Sand Hill Group, one of the earliest angel investment software firms, and he was profiled on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. He was named to the Forbes' Midas Touch of Investors and also recognized by CRN as one of the top 25 technology executives. He also hosts the enterprise retreat for the top 100 leaders in technology. In 2007, MR, as people fondly call you, founded the Corporate Eco Forum, an invitation-only membership organization for global 500 companies that demonstrate a serious commitment to the environment as a business strategy. In 2012, MR founded Indiaspora, a not-for-profit organization to unite the Indian diaspora and to transform their success into meaningful impact in India and on the global stage. By sharing insights, hosting events, and connecting people, Indiaspora unites the professionally, geographically, and religiously diverse Indian community toward collective action. Indiaspora events include its annual leadership forum, philanthropy summit, and the Global Connect program. MR is a board member of the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation, the Nudge Foundation, and the Wish Foundation. He has received several prominent awards and profiled in 2 books, Those Immigrants by Scott Haas and The $8 Man by Brenda Christensen. Actually, your original profile is 5 pages long, so I had to actually edit it, pretty significantly to fit it into 1 page. So I would encourage people to go on Indiaspora's website and to see a more detailed profile of Mr. Rangaswamy. So over to you, Mr. Amar.
Thank you, Vipul. I'm embarrassed by the lengthy introduction you gave me. I should have sent you a one-liner that just says MR. But great to have Rana and Apurva on the call. I just want to start by saying my first big event that Indiaspora did was in our Global Connect program was to go to Canada. And we were received with such warmth and hospitality. It was so beautiful trip in 2018 that we did. We went to Toronto. We had great meetings in Toronto. Then we went to Ottawa, and the then Indian High Commissioner hosted us for lunch. Also, the Canadian government, Prime Minister Trudeau introduced us to 4 of his ministers at that time, who we met with. We had a reception on Parliament Hill. It was a great event and really set the stage for how the diaspora can be connected. Both, I think Rana and Apurva talked about the strength and what the diaspora can do. And this is going to be evidenced by how Indiaspora can connect the diaspora to do even more things for good. So Canada was our first trip. And then we also went to the UK and had a connect with the UK. And then we want to do Singapore and Dubai. So our goal is to bring the top 5 diasporas together. And so it was incredible that we started off with Canada. It was such an amazing trip. And to also have Rana here in San Francisco with me as an Indian Canadian, and also Nadir Patel in India as the High Commissioner from Canada. It shows the power of our diaspora in all facets of society. But one thing I want to talk also about is our connection to India. So with every visiting president who goes to India, we've taken delegations from the US. So when President Obama went to India, we were there as part of him being the chief guest at the Republic Day parade. We had side meetings and so forth. Recently, when President Trump had gone to India, we had sidelines meeting with ministers and other people. So again, we do connect on a people-to-people basis, the different diasporas as well. What I'd like to kind of throw out for this group is how Vipul, like you said, having US, Canada, and India work together. I just want to touch upon the experience that Indiaspora had when we took a delegation to Israel. We were in Israel in 2017 for the 25th anniversary of the Israeli-Indian partnership, where Prime Minister Modi had visited Israel. And we at Indiaspora took a delegation from Silicon Valley, primarily of tech leaders at that time. And we ended up having a private meeting with the Prime Minister as well, where we presented to him the tech triangle. And what did we mean by that? We said, we're going to connect Silicon Valley and the US tech community to Tel Aviv and the Israeli tech community, and also to the visiting Indian delegation of technology leaders that had come to Israel. Okay. So just think of this trilateral model. And the prime minister was so excited. He said, please bring this to India the next year when Prime Minister Netanyahu was going to visit India. So the following year, we went to India, to New Delhi, and again had another trilateral between Indian tech leaders, Israeli tech leaders, and Indian American tech leaders. And it was an amazing experience. And I think we can have a similar thing with Canada, where different business models emerge. So let me tell you some of the things that came out of this tech triangle with Israel that might give some ideas for us here. One of the things that happened is there was an Indian company that had bought an Israeli company and was then marketing software and services to the US. There was an Israeli company that was licensing technology to India to support their customers in the US. So you can envision a whole different set of business models that can develop. For example, I know in Canada, Rana, you have amazing accelerators like Mars. And I know in Montreal, you have so much work going on in AI. In Vancouver, you have a tremendous body of people there working with Silicon Valley in the same time zone. I mean, you have such great talent in Canada that we can work with from the US. But India can take advantage of that same set of talent, right? So you could envision in the future, if we did something, there's an Indian company with offices in Canada and the US. There's a US company with a development center in Canada selling to India. I mean, you can envision so many different models that can transpire in the future. And that's what I'm hoping we can all make happen, is some kind of collaboration between, let's start with tech and it can spread to other sectors. But can we put together something in the tech field that brings together the leaders in Canada, leaders in India, leaders in the Indian community in Silicon Valley, to really look at how we can implement a completely virtual model, especially in these days of COVID, right? Remote workforces, remote selling, remote servicing of clients. This can truly, I think, be a showcase for a new model of doing business, and also using the diaspora to its fullest strength. So I think that's what I want to leave you with at this point in time, is can we make something happen that's very unusual, that's very different, that can really play upon the strengths of the diaspora, and something that both the consul generals can support as we move this forward in the future. So back to you, Vipul.
Yes, fantastic actually. So I would just like to elaborate a bit more on the points that you raised. In terms of the technology sector, some of our members for the Canada-India-USA Development Forum, the not-for-profit that I run, we have recently opened it up for membership, and 5 of our members are from the tech sector, including companies with turnovers of $30-40 million and more, including even a professor of technology at reputable Canadian university. So I'll be very open to the idea of, we are already discussing an IT conference. I have already done one IT conference 2 years ago in downtown Toronto at Hotel Novotel. So we are already discussing the second edition of the IT conference, and I'll be very happy to, work with Indiaspora if you are open to the idea, and we can reach out to other organizations as well, and drawing strength from everybody's network, and we can put up a better IT conference. So we can discuss about that, afterwards. In terms of Israel, I also reached out to Israel, I would say 4 years ago, when I was in another organization. I actually arranged a lecture with the CG of Israel to Toronto, Galit Baram. And she was very, very friendly. She was very India friendly, very warm. We are still casually in touch. And I also organized the Canada-India-Israel trilateral conference a few years ago. So we are open to that as well. So I think that's for the individual remarks, and that brings us to the next segment, which is a panel discussion. So what I'll do is I will throw in a few questions, a few questions to each of you, one question each. And then there's one question that applies to all of you. And then afterwards, feel free to ask any question to any other panelists that you like. So I will start with this. Silicon Valley and IT are synonymous with each other. Canada and GTA in particular is fast becoming a major IT hub in North America, especially I would say in the last 2-3 years. A lot of talent coming here from US and also from India. India, as everybody knows, is the IT backbone of the world today. So the question is for all the three speakers, where do you see Silicon Valley, GTA, and India's IT talent in the years to come, and how will it impact each country, starting with CG Sarkar, then CG Apurvaji, and then Mr. Rangaswamy.
Well, thank you very much, Vipul. I have many comments, and I think that I want to come back to MR's great point as well, because I think that there's actually some very some really concrete things that we can do to accelerate this trend that we're seeing out here, and I think that we've all over the years have come to this idea that the trilateral aspects and also sort of the impact of networks and really powerful networks from civil society, from business, to actually drive the relationship forward to the next level. And so there's some very concrete things we can talk about in terms of the Silicon Valley relationship. And of course, look, I mean, post COVID, everyone, with the great acceleration, people are also talking about the great dispersal from Silicon Valley, in the sense that tech is spreading out more generally. This generation of technology company that has grown up in this latest generation of technology companies, SaaS companies, and as the basis, and also social companies. That obviously we're at one point of the evolution of that curve, and I think what we're seeing more generally is the spreading out of the various bases for the growth of these ecosystems globally. And Canada clearly is a big player in that, and part of the role that we have here is to help accelerate both the human talent flows between the place, but also investment and trade between them. And so clearly, Canada's on fire in many ways in technology. It's we're growing leaps and bounds. We've added more jobs in the city of Toronto in tech than the major U.S. cities over a 3-year basis. Clearly there's a lot of activity that we need to pursue there. I think that post the coming out of COVID, I think that another trend that we're likely to see is what I would call intentional growth companies. And so one of the great aspects of a place like Canada, and we're starting to really appreciate that in the context of COVID as well, is that and also sort of social and economic change, that you need a strong civil society base. You need societies that, and cities that are anchored with great universities that have a certain amount of diversity at scale. You also need sort of open immigration systems. You need certain scale effects with talent and industry in those cities in order to make them truly players in this next economy. And Canada has a few of those, as MR nicely pointed out. And I think that the relationship between Canada and Silicon Valley is not an either or relationship. These are circulatory relationships that and with India on top of that. I mean, I would say if you look at the founder bases of a lot of the top startups in the Bay Area, for instance, most of them, or not most, but a good plurality, would have somebody of Indian origin, but also sort of often a Canadian. And sometimes even a Canadian of Indian origin. And so these are new combinatory sort of things that are happening here in the Valley, and have been probably for the last decade or so, and even more, but are really gaining, and those are our leverage points for this next phase of growth. And as tech spreads out, I think that idea of intentional growth, and it's not just a scale at all costs sort of psychology. It's going to be different phases of growth and different scales of growth that will be really important as well. And that's where Canada, I think, has, we obviously built, massive new companies like Shopify, for instance, and in this last generation. But I think that what I'm really excited about is the next generation of startups and the next generation of intentional growth companies that are behind Shopify, the next 10 or 100. And those will be integrated, and the India relationship between those is also sort of growing very fast, and is embedded probably from day one in many of those companies. But the Valley relationship from a funding perspective, but also sort of from a talent and ecosystemic point of view, is extremely important. So I'm really looking forward to the next 10 years of that growth.
Yeah. Thank you, Vipul. Thank you, Rana, for such a exhaustive thing. I think, I would like to go back to MR's this proposal of doing this trilateral on tech sector and in diaspora taking a lead in this. I think that will be a wonderful idea. Recently, Schulich School of Business in the York University, they did this hackathon along with Startup India. So that was very successful. They had 50 mentors from India, and people like Ratan Tata. Everybody was involved, and from Canada also 50 mentors were there, and there were 5 themes chosen, and there was a hackathon organized in India in Schulich School of Business. So I think if we can do something like that in association with maybe Mars or Ryerson. That will be a wonderful thing, because this is the heart of Canada's tech. Toronto is Canada's tech capital, and of course where San Francisco is, the Silicon Valley is US's tech capital. And in Startup India can be involved from India. And as you know that India's startup space is growing exponentially. If we look at 2020, this is the COVID period. We had like 1,600 additions in our startup ecosystem, and 12 of them reaching unicorn status in just 1 year. And if we look at, today's, we have in India, we have 1.2 billion phone users, 1.2 billion unique digital identity, and 1.2 billion bank accounts. So more than 750 million internet users, half of which were added in last 4 years, and half of which are in our rural areas. If you look at the data cost, they are the lowest. So, how US, Canada, and India can come together is, of course, the population, the Indian diaspora, the talent which we export both to US and to Canada. And also, the research and the kind of universities that are here. If we can bring that kind of thing together, and I'll request in Diaspora to take a lead on this, that will be wonderful. And I'm sure we can do a lot of concrete things in this regard.
Sure.
Great. I think it's a really something we'll follow up on, but I just want to make a couple of points as well. In the US, I believe 10% of the IT workforce is Indian.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge number, right? Now there are growing number of venture capitalists who are Indian as well. And a lot of CIOs and CTOs of corporations, like Rana, you mentioned, in a lot of these companies, they're of Indian origin. So, if we can bring together this mix in Canada and the US and bring the right people together on the Indian side, you can easily see something that I would call a win-win-win situation, right? It's not like one country or one set of players are going to win. I think everybody's going to benefit by having operations. And in the last year with COVID, I mean, this remote workforce and distributed workforce concept, I think has really been accelerated and here to stay. I don't think everybody's going to move back to Silicon Valley just because the pandemic has ended. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think this concept is here to stay. The model is here. So let's work on, making that better, right? And using the talent where the talent is, rather than, in the past, we forced everybody to move to Silicon Valley if you wanted to start a company, right? And what happened? Home prices increased, freeways got crowded, everything went out of hand, right? So this is a good pressure valve now, I think, for Silicon Valley to let some people go to other places. It'll kind of bring some equitable solutions and and better opportunity for other places as well. So that's my 2 cents. Is let's use this opportunity to make this a new model.
Yeah, to democratize Silicon Valley.
Sure.
Well, the same as happened
Radha
here.
and I can live in San Francisco. We're happy.
The same has happened here in downtown Toronto, as we are all aware. People have been moving out, moving to rural areas, to suburbs, and nobody's life has really changed. The work goes on as usual, maybe better, I would say, more. Companies have become more productive, and the highways are not as congested, as Amar just said. So a lot of possibilities. So my next question is for CG Sarkar. Rana Sarkar, you have worked extensively on the Canada-India file earlier, and now doing the same on the Canada-US file. So where do you see the synergies and or challenges in terms of trilateral relations?
I'll be quick on this, and what I'd say is that I think over the Canada-India file, I think is something which is going to be on a state-to-state level. I think that we're moving forward, and I think that there's potential for great energy on that file. But I think that as MR rightly pointed out and as Purva pointed out. The real genesis of this file over the next decade is going to, be through energizing these informal networks that have gathered momentum over the course of the last decade and a half. And and I'll give you an example. Like when I started working on the Canada-India file, a few decades ago, we've had a variety of ups and downs during that period, and we as a close colleague that many of Kasi Rao used to say, we've gone from the episodic to the strategic now, and I think that that's an important distinction in terms of where we're going in terms of the intensity of that relationship. But again, I think it's I started about in 2009. I was on the sidelines of the U.S.-India strategic dialogue, and they, a number of conversations with the senior folks there. They were like, "Well, what doesn't Canada have something similar to this?" And so we created the Canada-India Business Forum at that stage in 2009, just off on the flight on the way back, saying we need a place for our major strategic investors, our major industry players to come together with the senior Indian leadership. And we need a spot for that to happen. And we need to put it in the calendar, not when the prime minister travels or when ministers travel, but something which is a anchor point in the calendar. And the anchor point, around that conference turned into something which other players could start to, politicians, others could start to focus their agenda around. And by having anchors like that are put out by civil society and by other players in the network, I think that's golden, because that focuses the agenda in a much more concrete way. And you can create different sidelines onto that. Like, for instance, a lot of the investment, sort of the momentum that took place took over the course of those years, multiple repeat visits, the depth of that dialogue. And so I think that what we really need to do is, to create these sort of structured engagements, and be they trilateral. And I think that there's a lot of there's a real intelligence, I think, in making these things trilateral, and with particularly tech as the animating virtue, because we're in the midst of these incredible revolutions. Climate is going to be a huge component of this, and clean tech will be, and the energy transformation is going to be part of that. Defense, resilience of all sorts, including in healthcare. All of these, but really it's technology and the enormous sea change that's taking place that is going to be the animating driver. And so if we decide to put together some markers of events and start to gather it, and this is not something which governments will necessarily lead, but governments can play into. And so I think that that's where the success of this relationship and this trilateral circulatory band, is going to be in the next decade. And I hope that folks on this call can participate in that.
Absolutely. Well, that was the reason why we started it as a trilateral body, because I myself personally thought that was one piece of the puzzle that was missing. A lot of people are working on the Canada-India file, but as I said earlier, before we started the formal session, I was talking to Rana. I was noticing there are a lot of companies, business people of Indian origin, who have operations in all three countries, and there were not many platforms for them, to reach out to political leaders, business leaders in all three countries, someone to facilitate that. So that's why we started this as a trilateral body, and that's why we reach out to people like you, from different sectors. So looking forward to your help and guidance along the way, so we can assist companies and businesses in the future as well. So my next question is for Apurvaji. Apurvaji, Canada-India relations, especially in the last 5 years, are going through a topsy-turvy ride, to put it mildly. People-to-people ties, education sector, and business community is all very bullish on it. While the political leadership in Canada seems to push it into another direction from time to time. So your views on where we are today and where are we headed for the bilateral relations?
Thank you, Vipul, for the question. No, I think India and Canada, we are in a positive space right now. As you rightly said, the Indo-Canadian community, which is the hallmark of the Indo-Canada relationship. It is basically driving our relationship. As I already told you the numbers, there are 1.6 million Indian diaspora, 700,000 Indian citizens working and studying here. So all these people, and they are well placed in all sectors of society. If you see politics, commerce, all walks of life. And during the pandemic, the community has come together to serve not only the Indian community, but also to the Canadian community at large. So, when we are friends, I mean, because, if you look at also the investment, it has increased substantively. Even during the COVID period, it's now reached $55 billion US. Brookfield has become one of the top investors. All this is happening. This is happening during the COVID. The cooperation during the COVID is also going on. So definitely, I see India-Canada partnership in a very positive space right now. I mean, and it's driven by Indo-Canadian community and in the business community. So, but it could be better. If we talk about the SEPA negotiations that are still undergoing, it's going on for a long time. Of course, we can if we can fructify that will be wonderful. But talks have been going on. So of course, this is a relationship. It's a natural partnership. We are strategic partnership. This is a strategic partnership. We are in a positive space. But yeah, of course, I agree that a lot of things can be done more positively, and we are working towards it.
Yeah, well, as someone told me earlier, the FIPA, SEPA has been going on for a long time, but FIPA, I believe, is a low-hanging fruit. So I am a bit surprised. There's not much of a movement even on FIPA.
Yeah, we are. The discussions are still going on. So these are the two areas where we have to work. It will definitely increase more investments and facilitate business interactions. So the discussions are going on, and we hope that it concludes at the earliest.
Sure. So Mr. Rangaswamy, next question is for you. You see it from both sides, actually. As a tech entrepreneur and investor, you see one brighter side, the business side of it. And as the founder of Indiaspora, you work with political leaders in all three countries, and you see the challenges on that front. So what is your assessment of the political situation within the US today? and the overall relations between US-India, US-Canada, and for the companies that have operations in all three countries? A few questions all combined into one.
No problem. Good question. I think one of the things that Indiaspora facilitated in the US when we got started was we said we were 1% of the population of the US. We had no representation in the US Congress, unlike Canada, where you've had lots of representation. So one of the things, the US system is very different. So the US system means you have to write checks. Individuals have to write checks to politicians and to get them elected to office. So that's what our community did, was to write hundreds of thousands of dollars of checks to people with an Indian name, whether it's Krishnamurthy or Jayapal or Kamala or all these people, right? And we got them elected, supported and got them elected. And now in the US, 1% of the US Congress is of Indian origin, okay? So that's one of the things that the community had to do. The second thing is now we also have a vice president here in the US who will be inaugurated this week, who's of Indian origin. So again, you can see the strength of the diaspora growing in the US. And I think it bodes well for the future. Obviously, between two countries, I'm not a diplomat like Apurva and Rana. There will be challenges between all countries, but all I can tell you is the relationship between the US and India is on a trajectory that's growing. There'll always be bumps, and we'll solve them, but it'll keep growing. Same thing between Canada and India. The relationship is growing. When I talk to the diaspora, I can clearly see that. Of course, there'll be bumps along the way, but I think between these countries, I think the relationship is on a positive trajectory. And we as the diaspora need to help kind of bring some order and semblance at the right times, rather than let this get out of hand, right? If there's a crisis or something, maybe cooler heads have to come in and say, hey, look, let's solve this problem and stuff. So, but I think from a long-term point of view, I'm very, very positive on both Canada, India, and Canada, US now with the new administration here, and also India and the US. I really see that the next several years can be very positive.
Wonderful. In terms of the trilateral effort, we hosted the first Canada-India USA Trilateral Conference in 2019 in Brampton, and Ambassador Bruce Heyman, who was a former US ambassador to Canada, he came from Chicago and addressed the conference. Mr. Vishnu Prakash, who was a former Indian High Commissioner to Canada, he came from Delhi and addressed the conference. I reached out to almost all the Indo-American congressmen at that time, including Kamala Harris, Raja Krishnamurthy, and Ro Khanna actually participated through video, at that conference, which was done in Brampton at Courtyard by Marriott. And we are now working on the second edition of the Trilateral Conference. So maybe we can do something there together again, MR, if it's okay with you. And we can maybe take tech as a major component of that Trilateral Conference. So that will take care of whatever we discussed today and help to bring the three countries together. So before I give the closing remarks, if there's anything you want to ask each other, feel free. For a few minutes of open panel,
I'm just looking forward to working with my colleagues here on these initiatives. I mean, every time I get into a conversation like this, I get very excited. I mean, this is obviously the animating work. I mean, this is not just a job that we do. It's the animating work of our lives in many ways, and it's a great pleasure to do it. And really look forward to working with colleagues. And this, I'm very excited about the next 10 years and the prospects. And so I'll leave it at that from my side.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you for making me a part of this wonderful panel. Glad to know both of you. We have been speaking on phone, hearing about each other, but never like this. So thank you for making part of this. And we continue. We hope we continue these discussions, both trilaterally and bilaterally as well. I mean, MR, I'll contact you separately. Rana, I'll contact you separately, and we'll work towards whatever MR you have suggested. We will follow it up with you to take the lead, and I hope it something, concrete happens out of it.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And when we make a commitment at Indiaspora, we will follow through. Otherwise, I won't make the commitment. So we will get something going between the three tech sectors. Yeah.
That will be wonderful.
Sure. So my apologies. The Facebook Live has been acting funny, as you may have noticed. So we have to go back and forth to put it back on live. But anyway, so thank you to all the panelists today, to all the people who watched it on Zoom and on the Canada India Insight Facebook page live. So today's roundtable will be covered in Canada India Insight e-paper, which will come out in a few weeks' time. It will also be on the Canada India Insight YouTube channel, on Canada India Insight podcast, and also on both our websites. So the roundtable is now officially closed. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.